Setting your budget for hiring a nanny is about more than just hourly wage. Today we're going to talk about all the things that parents don't think about when hiring a nanny and all the expenses that come up that are unexpected. If we haven't met before, I'm Michelle Kelsey, founder of the Nanny Solution by Nannies on Call. And each Wednesday I'm bringing you a new video in a series called How to Hire a Nanny. If you missed it, last week we went over determining what you need, and join us next week when we go over where to find a nanny. But today we're going to deal with budgets and setting your budget for hiring a nanny. Let's dive right into it. The obvious one is determining your hourly rate and what you could afford to pay the nanny. Many things go into determining this rate, and some of it is set by what you need. So again, go watch last week's video if you haven't watched that yet. You need to determine what you need so you know what type of nanny. Do you need driving? Do you need them to have an education background, an early childhood education, any special needs training? What kind of nanny do you need will determine the rate. Also, the cost of living in your city. If you hire a nanny in Vancouver, for example, it's going to be more expensive than hiring a nanny in Winnipeg. That is cost of living in the city where you live. Have a look around and see what the salaries are. You can look on agency job boards, you can look on Facebook, you can look on Indeed, see what other people are offering, and then you can decide what an hourly rate that you're comfortable offering would be. Overtime. This is something that often gets forgot about because you need the nanny 9 to 5 every day, and then you start using them a few hours in the evening, a few hours here and there because you have a work meeting or something you have to attend. This is overtime. It will vary depending on where you live. In BC, where I live, it's anything over 40 hours a week. In Ontario, it's over 44. And in the US, it'll be different in every state you're in. Overtime needs to be factored into your budget because at some point you're likely to need it and you don't want to be surprised by that time and a half or that double time cost of having the nanny stay late. Taxes and insurance. This is another thing that catches families off guard. You need to budget for taxes. So when you talk about a nanny making $25 an hour, there's a portion of that the employer has to pay, and there's a portion that the nanny does have to pay as well for her taxes that the employer will take off, just like when you work your job. In Canada, you need to budget anywhere from 7 to 10% for taxes on top of the nanny's hourly wage. So add that in addition, if you're starting at $25 an hour, in addition to that $25 an hour. The other thing is workers' comp. Again, where you live, the cost will vary. The requirement to carry that will vary, but you want to keep these things in mind because often when parents hear 25 an hour, they multiply that and come up with a yearly cost or budget, but it's actually 7 to 10% higher than that in Canada. And again, it will vary on your province, your state, your country. Just remember to factor that in. This one's a little bit different, but having a plan B is really important. So many parents depend heavily on their nanny. And as we all know, they're one employee. If you go on vacation at your job, maybe someone comes in and helps out, or you can put your autoresponder on and get back to everyone when you get back from vacation. But that's not the case when a nanny goes on vacation. When a nanny goes on vacation, the children still need care. So you need to have a plan B, whether it's grandma, whether it's a friend, whether it's another parent, whether you hire a temporary nanny. We have Nannies on Call does backup childcare. So whether you use a service like that to provide backup childcare for when your nanny's on vacation, or when they have a sick day, can you stay home if the nanny's sick? Can you stay home if your children are sick? These are all things that you need to think about and budget in, because when the nanny takes her 2 weeks paid vacation, you are paying another nanny potentially on top of that. So you're paying double for that week. And that's something you need to think about from the beginning. Annual raises and bonuses. This is something also that gets forgotten. When you hire a nanny at the beginning, you don't think about the fact that next year you're going to maybe want to give her a raise, and the year after that. So many nannies are not given raises on a yearly or regular basis, and they end up leaving those positions. So if you want a nanny to stay long-term, make sure you budget in raises, gifts, maybe a birthday gift, things like that you can do for your nanny throughout the year. These are costs that need to be thought about when hiring your nanny for a long term. Transportation. Are you going to need your nanny to drive their own car? Are you going to provide a car? Do you need them to take the bus? Are they going to be taking Uber if your children have classes? Whatever the mode of transportation, that is an expense that the parents have to cover. And often it adds up. So you want to think about this in the beginning. If the nanny is driving their own car, there is a per kilometer reimbursement set by the government. In Canada, that's 59 cents. It'll vary depending on where you live. But don't forget that this will add on to your nanny's salary, and you'll want to think about that from the beginning. Entertainment and activities. Of course, a great nanny is going to want to take your children to do things, and you want to have the budget for them to do that. So whether it's taking them to a play group that costs a little bit of money or the aquarium that's maybe a bit more expensive, there are going to be expenses. Even things around the house like coloring books, workbooks, educational toys that the nanny may suggest are good for your children, that you want to have in the budget. Entertainment and activities are just something that gets forgotten all the time. And these little increments of, as we know as parents, these little things all add up. And before you know it, you're way over your budget. Next week, we're going to go over where to find your nanny. But if you are going to choose to use an agency or an online platform, there will be expenses to that as well. Although it's not setting your budget for the nanny rate, it may be an upfront or a one-time cost that you're going to have to pay that could be rolled into the overall expense of hiring a nanny. So thinking about if you're using an agency or an online site and how much that's going to cost you, this is definitely the time to do it. That was a really brief and quick overview on all the things you should think about when you're hiring a nanny in terms of budget and costs, things that parents often forget and you definitely want to keep in mind so you have a good picture of what you'll be spending each year. Join us next week when we go over where to find a nanny. And of course, if you missed it, go back to last week's video and check out determining what you need. I hope you have a great week and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.